Popeye the Sailor Man, a beloved icon of animation history, but some of his adventures have become off-limits. In this video, we'll dig deep into Popeye cartoons that have been censored, edited, or outright banned. So if you have a weak constitution, this might not be the video for you. We'll cover everything from outdated stereotypes, why some stuff is now off-limits, and how differently people looked at the world back then. That said, let's get into it. Fantasy, sci-fi, nostalgia, rerun zone. I Am What I Am, 1933. Popeye's second cartoon from 1933 already showed signs of problems that would plague the series for years. Set on an island with Native Americans, the cartoon used stereotypes common in early 1930s animation. In one part, Native Americans aggressively shoot arrows and try to break into Popeye's cabin, showing indigenous people as primitive and hostile. Another scene shows Popeye eating spinach to get strong and beat the savage natives. Animation expert Steve Bailey says, I Am What I Am isn't called out for censorship as much as later Popeye cartoons, but it still shows how even popular characters like Popeye showed the prejudices of their time, starting a trend that would continue in later cartoons. Popeye the Sailor meets Alibaba's 40 Thieves, 1937. In 1937, Fleischer Studios released Popeye the Sailor meets Alibaba's 40 Thieves, a Technicolor masterpiece. This cartoon improved on their earlier technical innovations from Popeye the Sailor meets Sinbad the Sailor the year before. It made better use of 3D model sets and the multi-plane camera. The result was stunning visuals, with desert landscapes and the cave of the 40 Thieves looking more realistic than ever before. The story followed Popeye's adventures in a made-up Middle Eastern setting, featuring the bad guy, Abu Hassan, and his group of thieves. While the animation was cutting edge, the way Middle Eastern characters were shown relied on over-the-top features and stereotypes that were common back then. As people's views changed over time, this cartoon, like many others from that era, faced new issues. In the 1950s, TV stations were forced to decide whether to edit, censor, or outright ban some of these classic cartoons. As innovative as Popeye the Sailor meets Alibaba's 40 Thieves was at the time, it was determined to be inappropriate for modern audiences and was banned from broadcast syndication. Big Chief Ugga Mugga, 1938. What seemed like harmless fun back in the 1930s now shows us how much our current views have changed. This cartoon starts with a Native American chief trying to kidnap Olive Oyl and take her as his squaw, kicking off a string of stereotypes. We see over-the-top versions of Native American culture, like a silly song copying traditional chants and dances and putting Popeye in danger of being roasted alive. It shows Native Americans as either funny characters or scary savages without any real depth. You can see this in how the chief talks in broken English and makes big exaggerated movements, common stereotypes back then. Eventually, Big Chief Ugga Mugga was taken off the air along with many other cartoons that used radical stereotypes. Animation companies have often had to ban or heavily change these old cartoons to satisfy network TV. In this cartoon's case, no amount of editing would help. The cartoon can still be found in certain collections where it's presented with historical context. Before the next cartoon, if you like these trips down memory lane, please hit that subscribe button or consider becoming a channel member. It keeps this passion project going strong and means the world to me. Thanks. And now, back to the show. Popeye's wartime cartoons. You're a sap, Mr. Jap, 1942. Now we get into the infamous World War II propaganda cartoons. In 1942, famous studios released You're a Sap, Mr. Jap, a Popeye cartoon that captured the essence of wartime propaganda. The short opens with a catchy tune, setting the stage for what's to come. Popeye faces off against Japanese sailors who try to fool him with a fake peace treaty, leading to a series of slapstick fights that use exaggerated stereotypes of the Japanese. They have exaggerated features like buck teeth, thick glasses, and squinty eyes. The sailors speak broken English and act dishonestly. The cartoon also uses visual jokes based on wartime prejudices. After the war, cartoons like this one were criticized, and Yura Sat Mr. Jap was taken off the air in most countries. It's a great example of how war can shape popular media. Scrap the Japs, 1942. Here's another example of Popeye's wartime cartoons. Scrap the Japs from 1942 stands out for its extreme anti-Japanese content. This famous studio's cartoon, released by Paramount Pictures, follows Popeye on a World War II naval adventure. The portrayal of Japanese characters is especially offensive in this one, even for wartime propaganda. Scrap the Japs takes negative stereotypes to new levels. Japanese sailors have those usual exaggerated features like thick glasses and big teeth common in wartime animation. Popeye uses slurs that reinforce these stereotypes. While many studios made anti-Japanese content during this time, Scrap the Japs is notably aggressive in its portrayal of the enemy. A Jolly Good Furlough, 1943. This Popeye short begins with Popeye being granted a month's leave after heroically sinking Japanese enemy ships during World War II. Excited to spend time with Olive Oyl and his mischievous nephews, Popeye's visit quickly turns into anything but relaxing. First, he's run over by Olive Oyl, who then leaves him to watch his nephews, who are full of energy and love setting booby traps. They create chaos for Popeye, and finally, he decides he's better off back at sea. Over the years, this cartoon has faced censorship for its use of racial caricatures and wartime propaganda. A scene where one of his nephews asks Popeye about shooting a lot of Japs, alongside another mimicking a Japanese soldier by stretching his eyes, reflects the stereotypes of the era. These elements are seen as offensive today, leading to edits or bans in modern broadcasts. Seeing Red, White, and Blue, 1943. In this World War II cartoon, Bluto tries to dodge his being drafted into the Navy by pretending he's sick. Popeye, working at the Draft Bureau, tricks Bluto with a female dummy, but Bluto still resists. In comedic desperation, Bluto jumps from a window, leading both him and Popeye to crash into hell, where even Satan rejects them. Bluto's escape attempts include getting hit by a car, with a nod to wartime rubber shortages, and intentionally getting crushed by a safe. After narrowly escaping death, Bluto locks Popeye in the safe, which lands in an orphanage and reveals hidden Japanese spies. Both Popeye and Bluto fight the spies after consuming spinach, with Popeye humorously knocking out Emperor Hirohito. The cartoon satirizes Hitler and Göring, ending with Bluto finally enlisting, aided by the spies spelling his name in a parody of a Jell-O jingle. This cartoon was censored due to its overt wartime propaganda, racial caricatures, and violent content. Happy Birthdays, 1943. This Popeye short pushed the limits of dark comedy in animation. It was censored due to its dark and potentially disturbing content. In the original version, Shorty, feeling unloved, attempts suicide by shooting himself, but Popeye intervenes by inviting him to his birthday party. However, the celebration turns chaotic, with Shorty's clumsiness leading to several accidents. The cartoon culminates with Shorty's repeated suicide attempts and controversially ends with a gunshot in the dark, suggesting Popeye might have killed Shorty. This ending was deemed too grim for modern audiences, leading Cartoon Network and Boomerang to edit the ending to a more cheerful note, where Shorty sings and the screen fades to black, removing the gunshot and the dark implication along with the text, "The Bitter End." Spinach for Britain, 1943. In this Popeye cartoon, Nazi soldiers in a U-boat aggressively patrol European waters, sinking everything in sight, including another German submarine. Popeye, en route to Britain with spinach for war rations, is intercepted and his ship sunk by these Nazis. After surviving an attack, Popeye cleverly uses the enemy's own weapons against them, eventually sinking their U-boat. Despite numerous close calls, including navigating minefields and using spinach to gain superhuman strength, Popeye manages to deliver the spinach to Britain, crashing into 10 Downing Street. The cartoon ends with a victory for Popeye, but it was later censored due to its portrayal of Nazi stereotypes and war violence, only being shown on specific adult-oriented TV slots like The Popeye Show on Cartoon Network and Adult Swim. Popeye a la mode, 1945. The story opens with Popeye being shipwrecked. He arrives at Joe's Always Inn on a cannibal island, where Joe, the king, plans to make a meal out of him. Joe fattens up Popeye with starchy foods, dreaming of culinary delights. During an initiation into a secret order, Popeye finds himself in a cooking pot. Despite resistance, the cannibals overpower him, flattening him into steak form. After consuming spinach, Popeye defeats the natives, dethroning Joe, who ends up chased by sharks. Popeye becomes the new king, but still faces the antics of a young cannibal. This cartoon has been censored for its depiction of natives, not airing on TV, though clips appear in Spinach vs. Hamburgers. It's available only on the Popeye the Sailor the 1940s Volume 1 Blu-ray DVD set, and not on streaming services. The Island Fling, 1946. On an island, a lonely Robinson Crusoe and his servant Friday spots Popeye and Olive approaching on a raft. Crusoe, eager to impress Olive, prepares for her arrival but shows disdain for Popeye. During dinner, Crusoe tries to charm Olive while sending Popeye on a wild goose chase for food. Popeye returns with an absurd array of animals, disrupting Crusoe's plans. On a treasure hunt, Crusoe buries Popeye alive, only for Popeye to re-emerge with treasure. After Crusoe traps Popeye again, then makes an advance on Olive, Popeye, now empowered by spinach, saves her, turning the tables on Crusoe. The cartoon concludes with Popeye and Olive leaving on a raft made from Crusoe's car, while Crusoe finds companionship with an ape. This cartoon has been censored for its portrayal of Friday and is not currently aired, with some parts of it having been lost or altered. Wigwam Whoopee, 1948. Popeye, in a Captain John Smith role, arrives in the New World and meets Pocahontas, played by Olive Oyl, who initially tries to attack him, but ends up falling in love. The romance stirs jealousy in Chief Schmohawk, who plots to eliminate Popeye through various comedic and dangerous attempts. Despite being tied to a stake and set on fire during a fake initiation, Popeye escapes with spinach-induced powers, saves Pocahontas, and defeats Schmohawk, becoming the new chief. This cartoon has largely vanished from broadcast TV due to its portrayal of Native Americans and content considered risque, although it was once available uncut on the Boomerang streaming app. Pilgrim Popeye, 1951. On Thanksgiving, Popeye's nephews aim to make a turkey their meal, but Popeye, compassionate, shares a tale of his pilgrim days when he was outsmarted by a turkey. In his story, the turkey avoids being hunted by convincing Popeye of his scrawniness. After Popeye shares his spinach, he's captured by Native Americans, but the turkey, now empowered by the spinach, transforms into an eagle, rescuing Popeye by dealing with the captors in humorous ways. Back in the present, Popeye finds his nephews gone, ready to serve the turkey spinach instead of cooking it. This was the last cartoon to use the edited 1943 theme song before it was re-recorded. This is another Popeye cartoon that shows native characters with exaggerated features and broken English, which was sadly common at the time. Popeye's Pappy, 1952. Popeye's Pappy, a 1952 color remake of the 1938 cartoon Goonland, is the 185th Popeye cartoon, with Jack Mercer voicing both Popeye and Pappy. In this version, Popeye searches for his father, finding him as King Pappy on an African island served by native tribesmen and women. Popeye's attempts to bring Pappy home are met with resistance, leading to comedic chases and disguises. However, when Popeye is captured and threatened by the tribe, Pappy, having a change of heart, uses an emergency spinach can to rescue his son. They defeat the warriors and leave together. This cartoon has been criticized for its use of black African native stereotyping, making it unsuitable for modern audiences. Popeye's journey through animation history is complex and colorful. In the 21st century, Popeye faces new challenges with changing societal standards. The beloved Sailor Man's past adventures raise an important question. How can we preserve animation history while addressing its problematic elements? That's a question I can't answer here, but needless to say, these cartoons should be preserved for future generations, if for nothing else, a cultural timestamp of our nation's history and how we viewed things very differently in the previous century. If you agree or disagree, let me know in the comments below. And as always, this is Rich from Rerun Zone wishing you a good night.